Hey, thanks for watching. There's my thoughts on the Cold War, just some things I'm learning about and wanted to share with you. Um, and Was reading through it's called The Black Book of Communism: Crimes, Terror, Repression. It's written by several European intellectuals. Once they had access to the KGB archives, um, I wanted to get it because I wanted to see what they found out and what information was there. And some of the things is just really startling. So I wanted to share a little bit of this with you, um, just kind of paraphrase some things I thought you might be interested. I don't know. It's about Romania. As an example, I'm going to go back to Czechoslovakia and some other places too, because there's some pretty nasty stuff happened. But this is what happened when, you know, Stalin, we go back, Stalin's Soviet Union infiltrated the American government and culture in the 30s. They were a very big part of our government during World War II. Um, Office of Strategic Services, the precursor to the CIA, Office of War Information, the State Department, um, and then they had a lot. They were able to actually move things around and make things work to their advantage. As an example, there's enough KJV archive evidence to suggest that Richard Sorge had a hand in Japan of encouraging the Japanese not to attack the Soviet Union, but to go south and attack the British, Americans, and Dutch. And so they had a hand in that Operation Snow with our entry into World War II. They had a hand in we were going up Italy. We were invading Italy. They wanted us to invade Europe, but Stalin wanted us to invade Western Europe because he had designs on Eastern Europe, and our attack up Italy was not going to be worked to his advantage. So he pushed the uh, the D-Day thing. And if you read the controversial books, which there are a lot of questions about them, D-Day through German eyes, they insist that there were literally Russian commissars at D-Day who took Russians and Poles and people who had been fighting for the Germans, not because they believed in the Nazis necessarily, but because they hated the Bolsheviks, but who fought for the Germans, who were captured, taking them right away, right off the battlefield, right off the beach, to probably certain death. So there's a lot of things how Stalin really manipulated us and I've explained about our lack of an intelligence agency at the beginning and how we were basically without weapons. But let's jump ahead to what was going on in Eastern Europe. Some of the things Romania was very innovative in its cruelty and oppression, not only non-communist like Richard Wurmbrand, who wrote the book Torture for Christ, a Romanian pastor, um, but even other communists who didn't agree with Stalin, with the Soviet Union, with the Moscow line. Um, the Securitat, the Romanian secret police, used all the classic methods of torture that you've heard about, um, beatings, blows to the soles of the feet, hanging people upside down, um, and all that. But there was a prison built in the 1930s in Batesti, about 110 kilometers from Bucharest. And the cruelty that they had far surpassed those usual methods. Um, one sufferer wrote, "The most vile tortures imaginable were practiced in Patesti. Prisoners' whole bodies were burned with cigarettes. Um, their buttocks would begin to rot. Their skin fell off as though they suffered from leprosy. Others were forced to swallow spoonfuls of excrement. That's human waste. And when they threw it back up, they were forced to eat their own vomit. This is the communist way. This is what you expect when communism takes over a country. But these tactics were part of their program of re-education. Um, Now, they were probably the first country in Europe to introduce methods of brainwashing used by the communists in Asia later. So they might have been used earlier in places like China and then brought here, but um, the idea was to induce prisoners to torture one another, and that idea was conceived in Patesti. So this began in the late 40s, and so they had four phases of their torture, their re-education. The first was known as exterior unmasking. The prisoner had to prove his loyalty by admitting what he had hidden when the case had been brought against him, and in particular, admit his links with his friends on the outside. The second phase was interior unmasking, when he was forced to denounce the people who'd helped him inside the prison. The third phase was public moral unmasking, when the accused was ordered to curse all things that he held sacred: his friends, his family, girlfriend, wives, and God, if he was a believer. In the fourth phase, candidates for getting back into society had to re educate their own best friends, torturing with them with their own hands and becoming executioners themselves. And to quote, torture was the key to success. It implacably punctuated all confessions between sentences. You couldn't escape torture. You might perhaps be able to shorten it if you admitted to the worst horrors. Some students were tortured for 2 months. Others who were more cooperative got away with a week. Now, the seminarians, people who were going to school studying to be a priest, they were tortured to have them renounce their faith. Their heads were repeatedly plunged into a bucket of urine and fecal matter while the guards intoned a parody of the baptismal rite. One victim who had been systematically tortured in this fashion developed an automatic response that went on for about 2 months. Every morning, to the great delight of his persecutors, he would plunge his own head into the bucket. Um, they said that one evil, definitely torturer in this Romanian prison, Eugen Turcanu, he also forced seminarians to take part in black masses that he orchestrated himself, particularly during Holy Week on Good Friday. Some of the re-educators, some of the torturers played the part of choir boys. Others were masqueraded as priests. The liturgy was very pornographic, and he rephrased the original in a very demonic fashion, the book says. The Virgin Mary was called the Great Whore, and Jesus was called that C-U-N-T who died on the cross. One seminarian undergoing re-education, playing the role of a priest, had to undress completely and was then wrapped in a robe stained with excrement. Around his neck was hung a phallus made of bread and soap and powdered with DDT. In 1950, on the Saturday before Easter, the students who were undergoing re-education were forced to pass before the priest, kiss the phallus, and say, "He is risen." This is the kind of demonic, evil stuff that was going on in Eastern Europe, and particularly here in Romania. Um, and this is what you get under communism. This is an example of what you get under communism. This is why communism should be rejected and fought and blocked whenever possible. This is not something that you want to take control of your country. There's horror stories that we'll get into if time will permit, if my health holds up. There's horror stories all over the world when this communist specter just covered the earth. Right now, it's very dangerous in our own country. These people are here. They're very vocal now. They're and if you let them win, this is what you have to look forward to. This is what your children have to look forward to. Communism is not something that you want to take control. Whether it's collectivism, whether it's left wing like socialism and communism, or right wing like National Socialism, like Nazism, collectivism is evil. It is inherently evil. It's basically evil, fundamentally evil. So you want to avoid that. But anyway, I might mention some things about Bulgaria next, but I think what I'll do next is I want to go back to our own efforts to battle communism as we knew it, what we knew about it. We know more now because of the KGB archives, and all the archives of these countries were opened when they supposedly went, away from communism. But so we know things we just didn't know then. But so you can see what our world was up against when they said that communism was a threat to our way of life, to our values, to our country. They didn't even know the whole story. Just think of what they would have done if they'd known the whole story. We probably would have had nuclear war back then. I don't know. Anyway, it's pretty bad. But a lot of books, a lot of things I'm studying. So I'll share some things with you. I don't want to belabor this because you need to look it up yourself and be convinced. Um, but it's a scary thing. It's here. And when you'll hear a politician or a news celebrity talk about how they really are, they believe in communism, or they think you're silly if you a red baiter, if you're opposed to communism, or you're seeing communists everywhere, or you're opposed to Marxism, or when a political or celebrity of some kind says they're a Marxist, you got to know that's the tip of the spear. That's the edge. That is what's coming. That's like a, and you don't want the tidal wave to get here. All right, thank you.